Hey everybody, welcome back to Engaging Culture, the podcast where we just deal with life events through a biblical lens. I'm so grateful and so thankful to have every one of you again this week. Thank you for joining us last week. It was a good start, and now we're off to the races again. We're going to open up with a scripture and a scriptural thought as we break down certain subjects. Turn with me to 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 16 to 18. And it says, always be joyful, never stop praying, be thankful in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus. So my thought today is concerning joy and how to maintain a spirit of joy. And in this text, we're given how to do that in the preceding verses when it says, never stop praying, be thankful in all circumstances. So a major aspect of developing a spirit of joy in your life is consistency in prayer and the ability to have gratitude and be thankful in all circumstances. Many times we connect our joy to circumstances. We wait for a good circumstance or good news or a good event for us to finally walk in joy. But that's not the will of God, because in life we're going to go through highs, we're going to go through lows, we're going to go through seasons where things are going the way we want them to go, and we're going to go through seasons where things are just not working out. And for us to be able to have joy in those seasons, we've got to be consistent in prayer. And the most important one is to be thankful in all circumstances. So in good circumstances, I'm thankful. In bad circumstances, I'm thankful. When things go my way, I'm thankful. When things don't go my way, I'm thankful. And that takes a lot of faith, because you're trusting and believing that even though things aren't going my way, God is still God. God is still with me. God is still for me. The plans that He has for my life are going to come to pass. And ultimately, He has created me for a purpose. He's created me for a reason. And no matter the circumstances that I face, no matter the circumstances that I go through, I'm able to be thankful that everything is working together for good. That the good things, the bad things, the challenges, the setbacks, the delays, and the various other things that happen, I trust and believe that God is going to work them out. So that's my thought for today. Always be joyful, be consistent in prayer, and give thanks in all things. Right, let's get into it today, guys. I'm really excited. Off the bat, I want to tackle an issue which happened in South Africa last week. One of the biggest podcasters in South Africa, his name is Mac G. He's got an incredible podcast with a huge following. He's got a podcast, and he also flights it on YouTube. So on his show, he had a guest, and the guest made a joke concerning a certain South African celebrity who dressed up in drag. And the joke was interpreted as insulting the transgender community. And he received an incredible backlash. He lost a huge corporate sponsor, and a lot of people started to just disassociate with him and to attack him. And there were various repercussions which occurred from that. What I want to talk about, particularly from this particular story, is how sometimes, or many times, the LGBT community is extremely aggressive to people who they believe have gone out of line. And I was not really supportive of the response, the negative response that this individual, that Mac G, got, particularly how his sponsorships got cancelled and how he got literally thrown, his life got turned upside down because of a joke that happened on his show. And one of the things I'm concerned about, if I look at what happened to Kevin Hart, where some people dug up some tweets from years ago, which he said, which were very distasteful, pertaining to the LGBT community, and he lost his opportunity to host the Oscars. One of my concerns is sometimes the LGBT community is very aggressive to people who don't agree with them, or people who make a joke about them, or people who don't believe what they believe. And it's very important that they as a community begin to come to a place where they don't persecute people who don't share their same beliefs or share their same values. We've got to be able to disagree without destroying each other. We got to be able to say, okay, this is what we believe. As Christians, we believe there's only two genders. There's only male and female, biological male and biological female. And if you guys don't believe that, it's fine. And we are not going to impose and Bible bash you with our beliefs. At the same time, if we say we don't subscribe to that ideology of there being multiple genders, I don't think it is fair that you're going to make people lose their jobs, lose their livelihoods because they do not agree with you. It's very important that for us to operate as a society, for us to operate together and to work together, we've got to approach it the same way, I would say, in South Africa, the same way Christians, Jews, and Muslims were able to live together. You know, the Muslims might not believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, but we don't run them out of town because of that, and they don't run us out of town because we believe that He is the Son of God. We're able to say, okay, we disagree on this matter, we disagree on this issue, but we're not going to kill each other because we disagree on this. And I think it's so important that going forward, that as a community, that this culture of just canceling anybody and going after their livelihood, yes, we appreciate that there are some people who are small-minded in terms of they come and operate with violence against the LGBT community, which is wrong and demonic. If you don't agree with that lifestyle, you've got no right to unleash any form of violence against them. And at the same time, I just think that this culture of this cancel culture, this run you out of town, you're going to lose your job, you're going to, we're going to follow up where you live, where you stay, where you work, and we're going to tell them this person needs to be fired because they do not agree with us. I think that whole culture has got to go. So that reaction, I believe, was just very intense, and I hope that MacG is able to bounce back. And there must also be a culture of forgiveness. When someone makes a mistake or if someone does something wrong, they should have the ability to apologize and be forgiven, and people move on with life. So I hope he's able to bounce back from this and to sustain the great job that he is doing within his platform. The next thing I want to talk about is we lost one of the ministers in the president's office, Minister Jackson Mthembu, and he had a funeral in Mpumalanga. And the interesting incident is on the day of the funeral, the MEC, the leader of that region, got to the funeral without a mask, and it created an entire internet backlash because we're now in a situation where it is illegal to not wear a mask in public. You are liable to get a fine or go to jail for 6 months. And when I saw that particular picture of this lady walking into this funeral without a mask, personally, I was very disappointed with it because as leaders, one of the major things we've got a responsibility to be an example. We've got a responsibility, particularly in this crisis, we've got a responsibility to be an example. We've got to be measured with our words. We've got to be measured with our actions. We can't do anything reckless because people's lives are on the line. Livelihoods are on the line. People's lives people are dying, people are getting sick, people are losing jobs, losing businesses because of these lockdowns. And as leaders, we've got a responsibility to be an example. So I was very, very disappointed. In fact, I was angry. I was even talking to my wife and saying, this is the stuff I don't like. This is stuff I don't like because we're trying to get people to behave a certain way in the middle of this crisis. And then you've got this MSC just walking in there with no mask at all. I was very angry. I wasn't impressed with that. And unfortunately, she gave a flimsy excuse that she didn't feel the mask falling off her face, and which for me just comes across very false. And she got away with just putting a fine, and I was not at all impressed with that. And I think that it serves the country wrong, it serves the country bad. As leaders, particularly for those in government, for those in these high-level positions, it's very important that they be the example in this crisis, because it lets us down as people. And in this very difficult time, we need our leaders to operate with a level of integrity and be an example to the people. We can't just tell people, we can't just put these very difficult measures on people's lives and not walk them out ourselves, because we're going to be like the Pharisees who Jesus spoke about, that they kept putting on laws and burdens on people and they themselves wouldn't observe a lot of these burdens that they put. So it's very critical that in this particular time, that as leaders, let us be an example, let us be exemplary to people out there in terms of not only how to operate in terms of faith, but operate in terms of how to be wise and cautious when we're dealing with this particular pandemic. But on the bright side, just yesterday, South Africa received its first shipment of vaccines, and they're looking at they got 1 million doses, and they're looking at getting 20 million doses. And yesterday, the president put together a very strong speech where he has now allowed churches to meet again. So I'm super excited about that we're going to be able to meet very soon and be able to gather. And I'm hoping that from here on out that we are not going to be shut down again, because I'm a firm believer that this whole second wave was not a church issue. Churches were some of the first venues were opened way earlier, before any of this stuff. This main issue, it just came from the December party, alcohol, and that entire mix. But churches, by and large, have been very, very disciplined in terms of not exceeding the amount of people in their venues and observing the protocols. And I think that going forward, churches shouldn't be closed, that churches should just follow the health protocols. And if a church flaunts those protocols, and if a church doesn't follow those protocols, it should be done on a case-by-case basis. But generally, I don't think going forward that this culture of just shutting down churches should continue, that we now need to continue having church and gathering as believers, because we serve a very critical role in society in this particular time. The next subject I want to talk about is concerning, now this is very interesting. This is the prophecies concerning President Donald Trump. Leading up to the election in America, there were certain prophets and pastors, evangelists, who came out and openly declared that the Lord had shown them that Donald Trump is going to be the next president of America. And after he lost the election and after Joe Biden got inaugurated, there were those who, first of all, after making that prophecy, never came out and spoke about it. After making that inaccurate prophecy, there's those who never came out and owned up that, you know what, I got it wrong. There were some who came out and owned up, like Chris Volaton of Bethel. He came out, apologized and said, guys, I got it wrong. I had prophesied that Donald Trump is going to be the president and I got it wrong. He owned up to it. And then there were another group who actually began to double down and increase prophetic, I'll call them prophetic conspiracies, that there's going to be somehow a miraculous divine intervention where Donald Trump is just going to come through the back door and somehow their prophecy is going to come to pass. And one of the things we have to be careful of when it comes to the prophetic is that there has to be prophetic accountability. That if you're going to make a prophecy that concerns an event of that nature and it doesn't work out, it is very critical that I think the Chris Volaton model, where you come out and apologize and say, I got it wrong. I think that for me actually strengthens your prophetic gift, your prophetic office, your prophetic calling. But the moment, for example, you just go quiet, you prophesy wrong, and you go quiet, or worse, you double down, that's when you begin to go down the path of false prophet, and you also go down the path of cult leader. And we've got to be careful, particularly with the prophetic. We've seen it here in Africa. There are some prophets who go on these crazy activities which we from the outside don't understand. We've seen it here in South Africa, we've seen it in Zimbabwe, we've seen weird prophetic activities happen. And one of the things, there has to be prophetic accountability. And it brings up another issue. I watched an incredible video clip of Bishop Noel Jones talking with this other prophet who's based in the United Kingdom, and an African prophet. And the African prophet was sharing a testimony that he was in a church where God revealed to him that a young man in church is going to get killed, and unless he sows a seed, that something bad is going to happen. And the young man sowed a seed, and the danger was averted. And Bishop Noah Jones' concern and his question to the prophet was, "Are you trying to tell me that if this person didn't sow this seed, God was going to allow them to die, that their life was dependent on your prophetic word being sealed with money, that if this man didn't give money, God was going to cause him to die?" And it's things like that which concern us when we're looking at some, not all. I want to clearly state that there's the gift of prophecy, the spirit of prophecy, the office of the prophet. These are all things which are good and healthy for the church. And one of the things I dislike is that sometimes we equate one bad prophet and conclude that all prophets are bad. Or we see one bad church and we conclude that, okay, because that church is bad or that church did something bad, all churches are bad, which for me is just, again, it comes down also in South Africa when one man does GBV, all of a sudden there's the hashtag men are trash because one man did something bad, all men are trash. And for me, that's just lazy thinking. If there's one prophet who's bad, doesn't mean all prophets are bad, because in every field, there are bad actors. There's good doctors and bad doctors. There's good lawyers, there's bad lawyers. There's good politicians, bad politicians. There's good police, bad police. There's good husbands, there's bad husbands. Good wives, bad wives. That's the nature of life, that there's good actors and bad actors in every field and in every industry, everything around the world. There's nothing where everything is 100% good. So in the prophetic, if there are bad actors, it doesn't now mean the entire prophetic. We now need to throw away the entire prophetic. Everything prophetic must be thrown away. Every prophet must be thrown away. Every prophet is false because one prophet got the prophecy wrong, or one prophet does weird things. It means that all prophecy and all prophets are wrong, which is not true. So what Bishop Noel Jones, this video is very touching. Bishop Noel Jones even cried in that video. For those who haven't seen it, just Google it. Bishop Noel Jones cries about the prophetic. Bishop Noel Jones' concern was that this prophet was arguing that if this person hadn't sown the seed, his prophecy of death was going to come to pass. That if this person didn't give this prophet this money, this person was going to die. And Noel Jones' heart was broken because he was like, "Are you trying to tell me that God was not going to protect this person's life if they didn't give you the money?" And it's those things which we need to look at in this next decade in terms of the prophetic, that there's got to be prophetic accountability. We've got to look at some of these things, and we've got to re-examine our hearts as believers. We've got to re-examine our hearts as men of God, as churches. We've got to re-examine some of these things and begin to be more and more accountable and more hermeneutical and more theological and more strong in doctrine, because there are false prophets out there who are misleading people. There are prophets where the motive is just simply money. Every prophecy has to be sealed with money, and a lot of these ideas and a lot of these concepts are harmful to the body of Christ. And it is my prayer that in this decade, in this new year, that God keeps raising up prophets who are not money hungry, prophets who are not manipulative, prophets who are not in this thing for the purposes of manipulating people for financial benefit, but that they hear from God and share with the church what the Spirit of the Lord is saying. Right, let's move on to entertainment. Right, okay, my wife has got me on this TV series called The Crown. It's about the royal family, and I think we're about 3 or 4 episodes in, and I'm very intrigued by just the culture of the royal family, particularly Queen Elizabeth and her husband, and some of the things I'm seeing, I'm beginning to understand why Harry's wife, Megan, said, let's get out of here, because just me as an individual, I wouldn't survive in that family, because they seem, first of all, to have three dominant streams of thought which govern them. They've got a religious element, they've got a traditional element which involves years and years of history, and then they've also got a political element which governs their home. That every decision that they make has to be based on religion, and I'm not talking about relationship with God. I'm talking about religion based on the rules of the Church of England and the Archbishop. And then they've got a traditional stream of thought. When they look at the traditions over the years, those direct their thinking. And then they've also got a political element where they have to think about the government. They have to think about, in terms of the monarchy being still a part of the public life of Britain. And all these various things create an unhealthy family, an unhealthy family dynamic, from what I'm seeing from the show. And from what I've observed, trying to observe religion, trying to observe tradition, and then trying to observe the political element, it makes that family not ideal for someone who's a free thinker, not ideal for someone who wants to, someone who wants freedom, and someone who wants to just live a free, or someone who wants a normal life. And it's just, for me, I'm just hypercritical, particularly the religious aspect for me, like how they treat people who get divorced, and there's just a level of unforgiveness and hard-heartedness. There's this other servant in the court called Peter, extremely hard-hearted man, and it's just, so far from what I'm seeing, I'm not feeling that those dynamics of the royal family for me look very, very unhealthy and very, very toxic. And I'm understanding now and sympathizing more and more with the Mavericks and the people like the Harrys who somehow get portrayed as traitors and as rebels. But I can now understand that, sometimes those kind of systems, those kind of old archaic systems, you can end up rebelling, you can end up going crazy, because it's just so strict and so judgmental and so cruel that individuals are going to find themselves at odds with that. But in terms of understanding just Queen Elizabeth, and just one of the things I will respect and honor about her is just the ability to take her duties and to take her role seriously. And I think for us as the church, those are some of the things we need to learn, that we have to be people who take the anoint, like there's this part on the coronation where she's being anointed with oil, and I was just like, wow, it's a very moving and powerful moment when Queen Elizabeth is being crowned Queen of England, and they anoint her with oil, and they make certain declarations over her life. For me, it just solidified again just the responsibility that we have as men of God, as children of God, that we've got to be the kind of people who, when we are given a duty, when we are given a task, whatever task it is at church, when you're given the role as an usher, as a sound man, as a children's church teacher, you've got to have that level of duty that I saw on Queen Elizabeth, where you take it seriously, that this is it. I've been given a role, and before God, I'm going to do this with all my heart and with all integrity, and I am going to do it with all my might. And my final topic for today is just going to be just the unfortunate case which happened last week at the derby between Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. Unfortunately, Orlando Pirates defeated us, and I had some people in the church comments I had to send the ushers to deal with, who were already throwing some shade at us. But we win some, we lose some. Unfortunately, on that day, Orlando Pirates were extremely lucky to beat us 2-1. but hopefully next time we will be able to get them. But thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to still be developing more and more content. I am tempted to go into vlogging. I'll see. I'm just trying it out. I'm compiling some footage here and there to do some type of vlog, but I'll see how best we can roll that out. But thank you so much for tuning in to Engaging Culture this week. We'll see you all next week. God bless you.